Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. I am your host, Dan Reeves, as always. If you're just stumbling upon this podcast for the first time, this is a primarily 12-step recovery podcast. We talk about that mostly. We have people come in and tell their journeys of from that messed up state of mind that we used to be, as Bill would say, that I like to say the seemingly hopeless state of mind that we used to have to some kind of life that's beyond our understanding. And, it seems to me that this 12 steps are a guarantee for that. So if you're looking for help in that department, you found the right place. My guest today, you've heard me talking about how the name of this podcast and the Spiritual Underground is my home group, my men's home group, and I landed in there just by accident, if you believe in those kinds of things. My buddy George that I worked with told me that I should come to this particular meeting. And, for months it seems like, and I don't know what the timeline was, but I'd have something else to do. I'm busy tonight. Now I got something going on. And, and ultimately it was all baloney. It was just that same thing like that Bob Earl deal. When you bring something that's working for you to me, I instantly reject it. It's like that, you bring around, you want a cup of coffee? No, thanks. You want to, hey, here's some warm cookies fresh out of the oven. Want some? No, thanks. I'm good. And a guy was trying to bring me into a recovery meeting that was really touching his heart. And I said, no, thanks. I'm good. But a point came where I wasn't good, and I showed up at that meeting, and that's where I met my guest today, with John Michael. From that day forward, I've known him, and this has been quite a ride. 10 years now that I've known him, and at one point we were sponsee brothers. He was sponsored by my sponsor, and they're still very close friends as well. So I'm just super happy. I haven't heard his story, but I know him pretty well, but I don't know his story. So I'm happy to have him on here. How's it going today, John Michael?
It's going pretty good.
Good.
Yep.
It's a Monday.
It is a Monday.
I don't really have a hang up on days, really, but there is something about Mondays. I'm a little tired, and I worked my butt off all weekend at the cabin, and then I didn't slow down all day today. So
right.
When my head hits the pillow tonight, it will be nice.
Yeah. I had a productive day at work today, so it wasn't so bad for me.
Yeah. I would much rather be busy than slow.
Absolutely. 100%.
Like I said, I'm no good at doing nothing. If I'm going to do nothing, I'm going to go sleep.
Right.
I'll take a nap. I'll go sleep.
I did take a nap this afternoon after work. I did.
I remember early on, because I was such a busybody, when I would take a nap, Christopher would cheer me on like I had, ran a marathon or something, congratulations, man.
Awesome,
I am proud of you for slowing down and taking a nap, man. And now I talk about it. I've got trophies in the other room for nap taking. I am good at it today, man. I can do it. Well, the credit meditation practice has taught me how to turn myself off at some level. Mm-hmm. So I don't ever mess around getting to a nap. I can pretty settle myself down in minutes. So actually, if I have 30 minutes to take a nap, there's a good chance I'm going to get 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's not going to take me very long at the front end to get myself to sleep.
Yeah, I'm not bad at falling asleep. My problem is I have sleep apnea.
Do you have a machine?
I do have a machine. But I'm usually like, I'm just laying down for a minute.
Laying down for
and then next thing you know, I'm fighting for air because I'm laying on my back and, fell asleep. And
Are you bringing it to the retreat?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Like I said, inside the cabin we have electric, so that's one of the things I think I think you'll be the third guy in the cabin that has one.
Okay, good.
It's okay though.
Yeah,
because you need some sleep.
And if necessary, I have a portable solar generator.
Oh, do you?
So yeah, I could always plug it into that.
Well, I have a little. I got that big Predator 3500 generator at the cabin, at the main cabin, and it'll run everything like 2 air conditioners and stuff.
Oh wow,
window units and stuff.
That's
warm.
That's pretty.
And when you get 15 dudes sleeping in there, you want to turn on the air conditioners. A, for the ambient noise,
right?
Yes. And B, it gets stuffy, even if it's not that hot.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of warm bodies and a lot of hot air getting expelled in there. But I also have a little Honda 2000 generator. Looks like a little suitcase. And there's been times, and I touch base with the guys at the campers. Mm-hmm. If anybody wants me to bring that, I can set it down in the. Nice. It's super quiet too. I mean, the bigger one is still quiet too, but not quite as quiet. But you get used to it.
So people bring campers?
Not campers. I mean, I called them campers. they're camping.
They're camping in tents, right?
So I call them campers.
I gotcha. Yeah.
No, it's not really conducive when you see it.
Yeah.
It's not conducive for dragging a camper down this driveway. This driveway's a little treacherous.
And I certainly regret not having come, in previous years, because I've obviously, I've known you since you started doing the retreats at your cabin. So
I was 18 months sober, first one.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
But I had Christopher and Darren on my shoulders,
Right.
And, it was all that imposter syndrome, thinking, what am I doing? I ain't got no business.
Yeah. You did great.
But it happened with the Bernheim, the year where I had an ankle bracelet on.
Mm-hmm.
They had that retreat in Bernheim Forest.
Okay.
That's across the building. It was just a day trip.
Okay.
And it was a pitch in, people brought dishes and everything.
Okay.
And the people who controlled my ankle bracelet wouldn't let me cross the Jefferson County line into Bullitt, where Bernheim is. So I couldn't go. And when they come home, they talking about how fun it was and how good a time they had and everything. But they said the one thing that was a problem is there was no privacy. Like, people were dog walking through their meeting and stuff, and like, what are you guys doing? And which they handled okay. But I said, I was sitting there, I told Christopher, I said, man, I got a place that's like private.
Yeah.
It's an hour away.
Right.
But it's private, and I didn't know if anybody wanted to drive down there. And now it's a freaking highlight of our group every year. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went back to the Trinity Group retreat. I guess it was 3 years ago, maybe 4. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. It was all right, but it wasn't like it used to be. So
we're pretty wild and loose down here.
Yeah.
But we still do I have an agenda, and we have activities, and we have meetings, and we have stuff that we're going to do. At the same time, great. And a lot of free time too, where you just get to jack around and fellowship.
Right. Yep.
Go fishing, go swimming if it's warm enough, sit around. You'll see guys that kind of wander off and they walk together for a little while, and they end up a trail, and you hear all these little stories about what they saw and what they talked about, and they had somebody got to know somebody they didn't know too well before, and all this kind of stuff happens. And it's always really the good stuff. What's your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is May 7th, 2002.
Yeah, that was 23 years ago, just the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very cool.
It wasn't my first sobriety date, but it's the one that matters now.
Yeah. I always like to say current sobriety date.
Yeah.
That's my current sobriety date.
It is the current one. And
I hope to keep it.
If I keep doing what I'm doing, I should keep it. That's certainly... if I keep doing what I'm doing, I have no fear of keeping it, no fear of not losing it. But, things can happen. And,
yes, I know.
I can say that there was a couple of times in the last 23 years where I came close. I got goofy. I was working for a painting contractor. I was their production manager or project manager, and things had slowed down, so I was actually working with the guys on the jobs because there wasn't much project. There was only one project to manage, and we were doing it. So I was helping out, and and the guys that worked for the company at that time liked to smoke weed at every break. And I was a smoker at the time, cigarette smoker at the time, which I'm fortunately not anymore. And it was cold outside, and so I would sit in the van with them while they're smoking weed and I'm smoking a cigarette. And I just got crazy thoughts in my head, and I started thinking, I don't need to go into gory details, but I did not use. So, and then any rate, so
that cunning, baffling, powerful thing, man.
It's
just one of them deals, I mean, it'll get into you, and it's weirdest stuff, that do it, and proximity is a big one, when you're around it.
Yeah, when you're around it, and you're watching people doing it with apparent impunity. Yeah,
like the book says.
Apparent.
Yeah,
because I can say that they're. I'm quite
probably
certain.
Not, but
right,
or not yet, even sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. So,
Where'd you grow up at? Where were you born in?
So I am the product of two immigrants. My parents had green cards. My mother was from England, or is from England. She's still alive. My father, who's passed, was from Austria.
Huh.
And he's the only one that came over from his family, and my mother was the only one that came over from her family. So the only relatives I have in this country, or immediate relatives, are my kids. My mother went back home, and then my mother has a first cousin, so that's the closest relative I have in this country is a first cousin once removed. And he and his family, he's closer to my mother's age, so he's probably retired. Last I heard, he was out on the West Coast.
Where'd you grow up at?
So I was born in New York City, and my mother moved to Vermont from New York City, and my father moved to Louisville, Kentucky. So I ended up in boarding school in Vermont and Louisville, and I finished high school in Louisville and started college in Louisville, and then dropped out of college. And
how'd school go for you?
School, terrible.
I didn't like school.
Yeah, I'm ADHD is all get out. I mean, it's bad, and I can tell you that it really came to a head recently, and I actually got diagnosed because we thought maybe my wife is a mental health professional, so she diagnosed me without actually diagnosing me, but she said, we should get you tested and get you a diagnosis, and I said okay. So, at my age, they don't want to put people on uppers, and I didn't really necessarily want to be on an upper anyways, but so I don't really take anything for it. But being in school, I was getting, as you know, I just completed a master's degree, and boy, it just brings it right out, I mean, sometimes it would take me, 5 times as long to do what needed to be done because I'm going down a rabbit hole. Squirrel.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I really struggled in school because of ADHD until I got into college, and then actually when I was going to classes, I figured it out for me. I just needed to show up to class, and if I showed up at class, I knew what was going on, and I was usually able to keep up. That didn't mean I didn't write papers in the last minute, because I did, but I was at that age where I could stay up all night and write a paper.
Yeah. So a lot to be said to just suiting up and showing up. We say that around here, and sometimes it goes, it's not. Again, these principles we talk about here are not limited to what we do. It works in life and tools there, man. Sometimes all just showing up is enough to.
Yeah. And I did most of my school sober, including high school, at least the last part of high school.
What do you mean the last part? Did you get into some stuff in the middle of high school? Yes.
Yeah, I did 6 different high schools. And as a direct result of, using.
What were you using back then?
Just mostly drinking, smoked a little weed, and, someone threw some cocaine in front of me and I did it, but it wasn't enough to get me off and running on that, so I was way too, I'm way too cheap to be, someone that's going around doing coke anyways.
I have this thing going on where I knew a coke dealer in high school when I was in when I was a senior, and he didn't have a car, and I did.
Oh, well,
and if I would travel him around,
he would give you a little.
He would give me more than a little.
You're right.
He would keep me going.
Right.
I mean, I had enough to pretty much maintain a coke habit for most of my senior year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and it really didn't cost me anything. It really worked out good on the weekends we partied.
Sure.
Because, man, you could party on that.
Yeah.
And that'd help keep you going all night. Because I have a thing where I have a deal with overshooting the mark on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was always looking for smooth. As a friend Burns used to always say, I was looking for smooth, but I never hit smooth.
Yeah. I was the guy that was waking up at the end of the concert, come on, Dan, it's time to go. I'm passed out in the seat. And we would go to a bar, and I'd ask whoever was driving, or maybe me, for the keys so I could go pass out in the car while they finished their night.
Or I'm kissing a girl I had no intentions of kissing, before the party started.
Yeah, I have a memory of crawling out the back of a single wide trailer window one night when she went to the restroom, because the only way out was through by her, man.
Right. I'm getting out of here.
I went out the fucking window.
I don't know. I didn't mean to do this. I'm sorry, but I got to go.
Yeah. She probably come in there and was like, oh, and saw that window open.
He's
Dang.
gone. Yeah.
But you ended up putting that down at the end of school. You ended up getting a handle on it.
So I'll start from when I started and move to that. So
I always like that story on when it first touched you, when you went, yeah.
So I know my first drunk was not exactly when it first touched me, but I'll tell you about it anyway. So my first drunk was. It was my father and stepmother's pre-wedding party. I think they were getting married in the next few days. And it was around Christmas time, and it was here in Louisville, and it was at a fancy kind of party type thing. And there's a guy going around with a white bottle and a guy going around with a red bottle of wine. And I had both. Oh, there wasn't room at the kids' table. So I'm at the adult table. And they just poured them for me, and I drank them. And I think I ended up with at least 2 full glasses of wine, if not more. I think I'm 10. I think I'm 10 at that point. And I remember distinctly going to my father and saying, I feel funny. And he looks over at where I was sitting. He goes, how much wine have you had? I was like, but here's what's funny, and I'm looking at this situation with years of going to meetings and hearing other people's stories and looking back on my own. My parents would give us champagne at Easter or New Year's Eve. Every single time I got a glass of champagne, I wanted more. And in the book talks about the phenomenon of craving, and I believe I had it then. Mm-hmm. Burns in his medical talks about how we're wired to be an alcoholic.
Yep, I have a similar history of people, my relatives and uncles and dad and stuff like that, letting you take a drink off the top of the beer. And
can I have some more?
And my uncle would let me stick my finger in his whiskey and water.
Yeah. And
I remember, too, that he would go to the restroom.
And then you'd go. Yep. I would go to my mother wanted more wine, right? It was some Italian white wine that they would buy that was probably inexpensive at the time, because but I was like, I'll get it for you. And then I would open up the fridge and she couldn't see me, so I would tip the bottle, drink some wine, and then fill her glass back up. Yeah. So I mean, I was drinking alcoholically from the get-go. Yeah. When it really truly first took off, when I was like, okay, this works for me, and I'm going to be doing more. This is something I need to do whenever possible. I was in 8th grade, and had my father married a fairly wealthy woman. My mother came from some money, so there was some money around. Like, I've got baby silver. When they say you're born with a silver spoon, I've got some baby silver. One of it's a spoon. So yeah, I was born with a silver spoon. I mean, we weren't, crazy wealthy, but my father married a pretty wealthy woman, and we were all in Jamaica. It was right after Christmas. I don't think it was for Christmas, but it was right after Christmas, and went on this. We were in Montego Bay, and tell you who I met. That Paul McCartney was there with his daughter and his wife, who's still alive, of course. Stella McCartney, the daughter, became pen pals with my sister.
Oh, really?
And we hung out with her. Yeah.
Very cool.
So, at any rate, little side story. but we went on it was called the governor's train to go tour, up in the mountains and tour Applegate rum, I think is what it was called. I can't remember, but at any rate, I got drunk and probably overshot the mark. But, from then on, that whole vacation, I was hitting the bar up. My sister was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Shh, just you mind your own business."
How old do you think you were then?
I was 8th grade. So
really? Wow.
Yeah, whatever 8th grade is.
Pretty damn young.
That's 13, 14, I think. Yeah, 13.
Something in that neighborhood.
12, 13, yeah. So from then on, whenever I had the opportunity, now I was in boarding school, so I couldn't really drink at school, except for my freshman year. I made a fake ID because I had a camera, and I looked like I was 12, but I had a fake ID that said I was 21 or 22 or something crazy.
The Indiana IDs for the longest time were easily modified.
Yeah.
You could take a compass point, especially if somebody in my generation was born in 68 or 69.
Mm-hmm.
You could change those to a 3.
Oh, okay. I got you.
At the time, it put us right over the hump.
Right.
And I used to do them for money.
Yeah.
I used my drafting tools to do it, the compass points.
Yeah, yeah.
And would scratch the little dots. You had to be real careful. And if you scratched the dots off there,
right,
you couldn't tell, man.
Oh, wow.
They changed them, obviously. They can't do that anymore.
Yeah, what I did was I took it was a Louisiana license, and there was no seal over the picture. So I took my picture, put it on top of the picture of the other ID, took a picture of that, and I had a fake ID that looked pretty real. And then I took a picture of the back and then laminated it.
I left one of my fake IDs in the back of the paddy wagon after a Motley Crue concert at Freedom Hall. And I was like, why did I leave that with the cops, with my name on it, and a modified ID, I didn't want to get caught with it, so I stuffed it in the crevice, and maybe, who knows, it might have lived there forever.
Right, who knows?
Apparently, I think maybe if they'd have found it, I maybe had heard about it. Yeah. And then we had a gimmick where we would get somebody older, would you give you their birth certificate, some pieces of ID?
Oh, and you just go get a license.
You could go down and get a license with your picture on it and their data. Mm-hmm. And then they would have to go say, I lost my driver's license, and then go get another one, so theirs would be okay too.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't supersede it. And people, and I had to pay that dude to do that. And then I remember I gave it no thought, man, but we would run out to Patoka near my camp, near Fargo.
Right.
And there's a liquor store in English, and we would stop there all the time. And I would use that fake ID wherever I went. Yeah. And we stopped out there, and I went in, and I throwed it on, and I wish I could remember the dude's name. I know his first name. And the lady looked at it, and she goes, "You're not Kelly Flannery. I know Kelly Flannery lives at this address." And what's the chance that I'm out in the country and this
in the middle
lady
of nowhere
at this liquor store knows the person that I got my ID from in town?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I snatched it back and ran out the door.
I bet. Yeah. Yeah. I remember went with Buddy to Boston. I was in Vermont with my mother. It was after I got kicked out of boarding school.
How'd that happen?
On it, do you want the truth?
Yeah.
Smoking parsley in my room. Yep. Some senior had said, "Oh, I got some weed for you," and I was like, "Okay, great," because I just ran out, and I didn't really check it out, and I'm still kind of young and naive, anyways, and it turned out to be parsley.
Sold you a bag of parsley,
but.
Still got in trouble.
I got in trouble, and it was zero tolerance for weed, and
so you were
I was
Boston
kicked out.
And
so that was a school, that was a proper preparatory school in Virginia. Do you remember the Preppy Handbook?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. It ringing a little bell, but I don't.
Yeah, it was back in the late 70s, early 80s. There was a thing called the Preppy Handbook. I guess mid 80s, whatever. Preppy Handbook, and. Couple of that school that I got kicked out of was in the Preppy Handbook, along with a few others, as preppy schools. any rate, I got kicked out of there, and I went to Bellows Falls Union High School in Bellows Falls, Vermont, and that's where I finished up the year that year because that was the public school where my mother lived, and and I just any chance I could, I was smoking weed or drinking or whenever I could, and my resources were I mowed lawns and stacked wood or whatever, but I
You don't get you a lot.
I didn't get you a lot. No, I wasn't no high roller, but I'd steal from my mom, or I need money for dinner, and that $5 would buy I'd buy
nickel bag.
I'd buy Molson's, or I didn't like drinking like Budweiser. I liked getting Labatt's or Molson's or what was the other ones? I don't know, all those Canadian beers that we always liked in Vermont. Yeah. So, at any rate, I was getting in trouble, and then so my mother got me into school. So it's interesting. It was closer to her. Vermont Academy was a small boarding school in Vermont, and it was closer to my mother's house than the public school that and so she got me in there, and I was a day student there for most of the year until my mother got sick of my shit. And because I was, when you're doing that stuff, you're usually bumping heads with your parents. Mm-hmm. And I was not a good son. I wasn't awful, but I wasn't great either, And I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking as much as I can, which, isn't a ton, but, I'm doing it. And so she had me become a boarding student for the last part of the year. So I moved in as a boarding student for the last, I don't even remember how long it was. And I ended up getting kicked out. That's cool too. That was high school number 3, by the way. So the prep school was the first year and a half, and then the public school up in Vermont was number 2, and then this was number 3. And I got caught drinking prom night, and so I got caught drinking prom night, and then they didn't kick me out then, but I had to go in front of a committee, and they said, well, they informed my mother and myself that I was not invited back for the next year. So, and then I ended up coming down to Louisville, where my dad had been for, at that point, I don't know, 10 years or more. Or maybe not quite that long, but so I went to high school here, or I was enrolled in high school here, and I started going to classes. I don't think it was the first week was done before I was shipped off to treatment. There was it was Labor Day weekend. I went to a party, I got drunk, and then there was another party, and I got more. So, yeah. Any rate, my sister wrote a poem about it. I wish I have it somewhere, or I used to. But my father and I had I was drunk and stoned too, and my father and I had a confrontation, and nobody got hurt, but it could have happened. That could have happened. And he was at wit's end, and next thing you know, I'm seeing a drug counselor, and he's recommending, well, I'd like to set you, it's just an evaluation up in Minnesota. I didn't go to Hazelden like our friend Christopher, but I ended up at St. Mary's, which had the adolescent program. That, as a matter of fact, St. Mary's at that time was considered to be, I think, the better for adolescents, whereas Hazelden was better for adults. That's what I heard at the time. Yeah. Who knows? Any rate, I went there, and then sure enough, they're like, "Oh, we think you have a problem." Matter of fact, we're going to diagnose you as chemically dependent. and then I went to a halfway house, and I wasn't buying it. I'm 17 years old at this time.
There's no way I have a problem.
Right. I'm just trying to.
What are these
I'm
people
just. It's just a
doing to
party,
me, man?
Come on.
Just a kid too. What's up?
Right. Exactly. But combine your alcoholism with my ADHD, and my school was not doing good. That the year that I was at Vermont Academy, I got 3 D's and a B. Calculus. I was a junior at this point, taking calculus. I could have taken the AP test for it too, but B. That was the B. And I remember, so because I've always been a math guy, right? So I'm in the. I think it was the December. It was the December fall exam, and I'm in there, and I'm stoned, and I'm figuring it out. And I did well on it, and got one of the highest grades in the class. And I'm like, well, that worked. Guess what I'm going to do for chemistry and English?
I figured it out
history,
now.
Right? Yeah. And I flopped all 3 of those exams, or the rest of the exams. So yeah, it was not a good experiment.
Calculus and alcoholism stopped my college career. I started going to college, and when I hit that, it was progressing to the point I just could not do both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
never could get a figure on calculus. I just never could.
Yeah, that was my. So yeah, I was always good at math, and I was always in the accelerated, and so I did an accelerated thing at where I was in pre-cal as a sophomore, so I was taking calculus as a junior. I took both geometry and pre-cal as a sophomore. Anyway, so by the time I took calculus for credit in college, I'd already had it again and partially again, and then went back and took pre-cal again. So by the time I actually took it for credit in college, I did very well in calculus.
I know I watched myself just fall behind slowly in math the whole way, once you start falling behind the curve, and then you proceed to the next year and you don't have the tools from last year. And
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it.
Now, geometry was a different thing. I could do that. But algebra and all that, and then the calculus and everything, I just never would I couldn't do it. But I did find out, and I'll tell this quite often, is that I did get good grades through high school. I never rarely got a C. Most of my grades were A's and B's.
Really? Nice.
Not me. But one of the things was, and looking back on it, was nobody gave me any crap if I was getting good grades. And it wasn't that hard to get good grades.
Right.
I didn't find that difficult.
Right.
And so, like, now, when I had a D on it, and even C's and stuff, when my grades would slip down into there, well, the heat would come down from home, mom and dad kind of stuff, and I'd start getting under the microscope. Mm-hmm. But if I come home with A's and B's, I was pretty just much left to do whatever I wanted to do. And it seemed like the thermometer allowed me to whether if I could run and gun and do what I wanted to do or not. So it was worth it to spend the time to get the grade so I could do the other stuff I wanted to do.
Yeah. I kind of like
good grade point average
honestly.
at the end.
Yeah, I like that. I was near the bottom of my class in high school. Like I said, in college, I kind of figured it out.
I also did junior and senior year, half of the year in vocational school.
Oh, okay.
Drafting. Mm-hmm. Which it made, I'm a whiz at that. I'm a natural gift. I've been doing it now since I was 14 years old, man.
If you dig it, you're going to pay attention.
And I'm still doing it.
Right,
and, even to this day, and I've never quit. And like I said, there's a guy that lived down the road here. I grew up in this house. My very first drunk was at this table. This
very table.
In this very room.
Yeah, that's cool.
And around the 8th grade or something. Yeah. But now I'm doing a recovery podcast at this same table. And that is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
But he lived down the alley and around, and I would mow his grass. I had a little XR75 motorcycle. And Dad bought as a basket case.
I remember those. Sure.
It,
yeah.
And put it all back together, and I would ride it and pull my lawnmower behind me.
Oh, okay.
And go down there and cut his grass.
Nice.
And he asked me one day, he said, would you like to learn how to draw house plans? And I'm like, well, what is that?
Right.
You know, and he took me in and showed me. And he was tired of paying his architect the kind of money he had to pay. And he was an alcoholic too.
Oh, yeah.
Good old boy. I mean, the dude, his brother is my godfather. And these two men, Billy and Clem, are Dad's best friends growing up from childhood.
Oh, cool.
And Billy took me under his wing like crazy. He would put me on he built houses.
Yeah.
So in the summertime, I always had a job, and a good paying job. He would overpay me.
Oh, yeah.
And he would blow up my ego all the time, you know, tell people, you want to talk, see this young man right here? This young man right here is the best grass cutter you will ever find. and that kind of stuff, which would raise my self-esteem and stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
And he didn't want to draw those house plans because it cut into his drinking.
Right.
And he sat over and taught me how to, and you know, I was taught, and he had catalogs of house plans.
Okay.
And you might take one and mirror it.
Okay.
On paper.
I got you.
And you just had to do the plan, the foundation, the 4 elevations, and
to get
a wall section to get the building permit.
To get the building permit.
And that's all he wanted.
Right. Yeah.
And he would give me
kind of all you need in Louisville too.
Yeah, even today I think.
Yeah, that's all you need
to get a building permit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he paid me $200 back then for a set of house plans.
Oh wow.
So I was making tall cash, and I was doing like a set a week for him in the summertime. In school year, it was a little slower. I couldn't
Sure, yeah.
Keep
but if
up.
You're doing other things too,
But that taught me to draw, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah,
and I'm still, I will go to a place tomorrow and do some more of it.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's.
But
awesome.
I interrupted. I jumped in there.
No, that's all right.
Sidetrack things.
That's all right.
But that's why one of the reasons where I was
squirrel.
going with that. That's one of the reasons why I was able to get that good grade, because that was half of my day.
Right. Was drafting.
And it counted for, multiple credits, because half the day was an A every year.
Nice. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't. I just did regular high school. But so that was, so I moved down here, and then I got sent off to treatment. And
so you went to Minnesota?
I went to Minnesota and St. Mary's, and then I ended up in a
Was you scared to death?
House. I didn't know what the hell. Yeah.
I mean, like, I get sent off at basketball camp.
So you know what I
Bobby
did?
Knight basketball camp, I'd be scared to death. I mean, I can't imagine getting sent off to treatment.
So I knew I was going up there like 10 days before or something like that. So I stopped using everything. Right?
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
With the brakes.
Oh, I put the brakes right on, man. I was like, because I didn't want it. I didn't want to get diagnosed as a whatever. I wanted to come back and party, right? And so. I didn't do anything, and of course, when they tested me, everything was still pretty high. The weed was still pretty high, and
it takes a long time for that.
It didn't matter. So my alcoholic thinking at that time was, well, shit, I should have kept on going until I got it right. So, and I ended up. Here's what's funny is so I was there, and I ended up finding a roach in my wallet. Right? I was walking around with a roach in my wallet for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, who knows how long. And I was like, so I flushed it. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll do this. Well, the next thing you know, if someone else finds one, I'm like, yep, let's smoke it. So, yeah, at any rate. And what's funny is that night that I smoked it, they played the song Remains the Same to us. It was like a weekend, so we got to see a movie, and that's still I need to go back and see that sometime, because I love Led Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm.
But
me too. I went through a whole big rabbit hole phase of Led Zeppelin for years. That's the only thing that got played on my radio.
Yeah.
All of it. I think I got every album upstairs still.
Do you?
And
I remember having
every CD upstairs.
I used to have the
all
box
those
sets.
Yeah. I mean, I got a whole collection up there of all the hard copy kind of Led Zeppelin.
Right.
I didn't have cassettes.
My current wife just talked me to get rid of all that stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, because everything's online now.
Yeah. You don't really need it.
No. So I got rid of all my CDs. I got nothing
upstairs.
for them. I went to Book and Music Exchange, and they're like, we can give you $10. I gave them, thousands of dollars of CDs, what new, or something. But
vinyl's making a comeback, and people are actually paying money
I
for
know.
vinyl.
Yes, they are. Vinyl is. Yeah.
Get a record player in there.
I don't have any of my old vinyl. All the vinyl's gone.
I got all the Kiss albums. I got Led Zeppelin. I got a hell of a stack of vinyl up there. My problem with my Kiss albums is I cut the the album covers apart and had them all on my walls. So
yeah.
That's the only ones I did that to.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. I wasn't a huge Kiss fan, but
I was.
Yeah. I have friends that were, that's for sure. So I got sober. One story that's worth telling is that, again, I was in the halfway house, and they're like, John Michael, you're not getting this. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And someone said to me, John Michael, why don't you pray? Give it a try. So I did. And I said,
wow. Did you grow up in households and stuff that didn't have any?
Yeah, we did. We weren't much. I mean, we went to church on Easter and
Christmas and shit like that. And when somebody got married,
my mother liked to sing, so she would go to church to sing in the choir.
Oh yeah,
but she didn't make us go.
Oh yeah. It's kind of what it was around here too. My mom and dad didn't go to church. I mean, even on Easter and Christmas, the rest of the whole family would go to church. And I had all these cousins and stuff. And everybody else would get dressed up and go to church. And me and my brother and my parents because a lot of times they would come. Some family from out of town would come stay here with us in this house.
Yeah, and they would go to church.
They would go to church, and we stayed put.
Okay.
And I could go anytime I wanted, and I did go sometimes with both of my grandmothers every now and again because I would spend the weekends with my grandmothers. Now they wouldn't make me.
Right.
But they would invite me, and for some reason I would go with them when they said, let's go.
Right. Yeah. No. I did.
So,
I did go to church, but anyway, I
just wanted to establish that was not something that you kind of grew up with.
No, I was not a big church goer, but we did go some. And interesting. I was always uncomfortable in church.
Me too.
I don't know why.
I was hearing some conflicting information.
Yeah, I just was uncomfortable. Never liked it. Yeah.
Hold on, he just said your loving Father, and then he said, if you do bad,
fire
you're
and
burn in hell.
Right.
And there's this dead guy selling this big cross up there, man. What is that about? I hear you talking, but that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I got your story. It's a pretty cool story you're telling about that, but man, we drove freaking steaks to him and stuff.
Yeah.
So the buddy said, or whoever said, try prayer.
Why don't you try praying? And so I remembered I did, one of those alcoholic prayers, and I did, and I also remember I did some alcoholic prayers when I was drinking in my cups, I
like the foxhole prayers.
Kind of like that, but I wasn't necessarily in trouble. I just remember being like really down. Yeah. I don't even remember what was going on. I mean, I don't think there was any. I mean, probably just struggling in school like I always did.
I listened to too much Pink Floyd and it got me down.
Yeah, could be that too. I mean, I'll tell you what, I was listening to a lot of stuff. But I remember having one of those prayers, God help me. And you know what, funny enough, less than a year later, I'm in treatment. So maybe he did help me. But at any rate, in the halfway house, I remember, I don't know who you are, what you are, but I need help. And almost right away, I things churned for me. And I don't know what I did differently, but next thing you know, I was voted the most improved resident at the halfway house. And next thing you know, I'm ready to graduate and had come back to Louisville and, with my dad. And so I ended up at school so I went to a school while I was at the halfway house. So that was school number 5. Number 4 was the one I went to for like 2 weeks. And when I was coming back, my father was like, well, do you want to go back to the one school or do you want to go to this other school? And I was like, well, that other school sounds more, of my speed. And because I'd already established, at the other school, I'd already established my crew, the people that I wanted to party with, and it was probably better. At that time, I was like, well, I think I want to stay sober. So,
would you say that you just started feeling better and stuff about yourself, and when you started this change that happened to you? And
oh yeah. I mean, I was like, okay,
start to feel better and
all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all that. I started feeling,
It's a weird thing.
So it was kind of like it was kind of like I did the first 3 steps in a way. I was like, I can't do this. Maybe someone else can. Oh well, wow. I think I'll let him. Yeah. He can. That was the old way. I can't. He can. I think I'll let him.
Yeah.
So that was my story for a long time, honestly, was the first 3 steps.
Were they official like that, or are you just reflecting back and saying?
I'm just reflecting back. I mean, I gave lip service to the first 3 steps, and I would say exactly
so they
that.
were teaching it.
Oh yeah, they were teaching the steps, but you know,
I know some places don't.
Yeah, no, that's true. You know, and we weren't like going heavy into the steps either. I mean, the halfway house. I mean, that was not part of it.
Yeah, but I think in that timeline, from what I understand from people like Burns and Christopher and some other people, they weren't really. There was a dead period like where they really weren't.
Oh no.
Beating that drum.
Oh no, there were some people we called big book thumpers, but no, there were a lot of people that were not working the steps.
Yeah, they were just showing up.
I mean, I would have
stay sober and go to meetings.
Right. And I would say that there was a lot of people that
don't drink and go to meetings.
A lot of old timers are that way. Yeah. Just don't drink, go to meetings.
I've heard that, a number of times. Joe and Charlie
Absolutely.
talk about it, and Burns talks about it. I've heard Christopher talk about it. It just wasn't really. It just kind of got like set to the
100%.
side for a while.
And that was my experience too. I did not hear people. I hear people give lip service to working the steps, but I never really saw it.
Yeah,
like you do today.
Yeah. That's one of the things I've always liked about the Spiritual Underground, and I tried to carry that on, is that they people would kind of, and we do it today, we congratulate one another on particular steps and to like demonstrate to that new guy over there that this guy's getting better and here's why.
Right. Here's exactly why. Because he is doing step work.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, we could probably talk all night. I can give you, shorten it a little bit. I stayed sober for almost 5 years. And, a lot of things happened. It was over 5 years because I celebrated 5 years.
That's a tough window.
Yeah. I stayed sober for 5 years. So from 1985 to 1990, I was sober.
And you're almost a 68 model, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So 17
to
22.
So that's a tough window.
Yeah.
I sure as hell couldn't.
I'm trying to remember when I relapsed. Oh, it was Christmas. So my sobriety date was for a long time was like September 30th, I think. Yeah, it was the 30th. That was when I smoked weed in the treatment center. Yeah, and watched The Song Remains the Same. So that was September 30th of 1985, and then from 85 to 90, December of 1990. I was down here on Christmas break when I drank.
Did you think of it as a relapse then? Or did you think of it as like, oh man, I shouldn't be doing this, or was?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I was plugged in. I was going to meetings up in and hanging out with some sober people down here when I was down. So you
knew.
Oh yeah, I knew. Yeah, I knew what I was doing. And I went right back to meetings when I got back and stayed sober for a few months.
How long do you think that lasted?
I stayed sober for most of that second semester.
No,
I didn't.
The drunk.
Oh, the drunk days.
Days.
Just
did that and bam, back in.
Yeah, because I also at the second half of that. So for the second half of that of the Christmas break, I went to my mother in Vermont because she was actually getting ready to leave. She was going to go back to England, and I met one. So I was at Marquette, and I met one of the Jesuit priests who happened to be up in Vermont just by chance, and from the meeting, I knew him from the meeting at Marquette. So we went.
Drunk monk.
Yeah, another drunk monk. Well, he wasn't a monk. I'm sorry.
I know, but I just
okay.
You said a Jesuit priest. I mean,
a Jesuit priest. I did say he was a Jesuit
level,
priest. Yes, 100%. Yeah. He was a Jesuit priest.
That's just not some country pastor.
No. Some people call the Jesuits the Green Berets of the Catholic Church because they're the ones that go out in the front lines. And in the roughest places.
So you met him and...
because Marquette is a Jesuit university.
Oh, I didn't know it.
Just like Bellarmine is a Jesuit university.
Oh, is it?
Or Jesuit, yeah. Huh. And so's Loyola. There's several. Georgetown in D.C. area. Yeah. Anyway,
Didn't know any of that.
Yeah. So my mother was not happy with me that I was drinking because she remembered just 5 years ago, which to me, that was a long time ago. I've changed. But, she's like, no, you haven't changed. It's been 5 years.
You're back.
And you're back. And to her, it felt just like it did when I was drinking when I was 17.
Yeah.
And she was not happy about it. So my first thing my father said when he saw me drinking was, all that money wasted on treatment. Because he didn't have, he paid for it out of pocket. So, at any rate, I went back to school and got sober and struggled with school a little bit that semester, but I did pass everything. My father was not happy with that. And so, at any rate, I ended up not coming back here, and I stayed up there, and he wasn't going to pay for school anymore. And I don't know, at any rate, I stayed up there, and I think I took a class, but I dropped out. I don't remember. All I know is I started drinking again, and then I got sober again, and then I stayed sober for a few months, and then I was out not going to school for a while now because my father stopped paying for school, and so I was up in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and I started getting jobs, just doing different jobs, and I drank again or smoked weed or something, and then I actually got sober and stayed sober for like 2.5 years, and then I drank for real this time. I put some months of drinking together. Really gave it a go, and I drank alcoholically every time, once I put one in me, I had no control over what I was going to do, Not a lot of bad things happened. I ended up in some uncomfortable situations and, again, maybe kissed a couple girls I wouldn't normally have kissed or whatever. But
that's the worst thing that happens.
You believe me.
Too goddamn bad.
No, I know. I did have a car towards that end. At that time, I had a car. But, where I was in Milwaukee, I was pretty much walking distance to where I was living. So it was like I might drive a car to the bar and then I'd be like, you know what, I think I'm just going to walk home. So I was smart enough to even do that, So I dodged a lot of bullets, I think, because of that. Sometimes it was there's a couple of times where I had to go, okay, where did I leave the car?
When you had to go get it tomorrow.
Had to go search for the car. Because, it's like, I think I was going near that bar, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines is I always said I never was a blackout drinker, but there was a lot of nights I couldn't remember.
Right. Uh-huh. Yeah. That's my story too, and I'm sticking to it as well. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily a blackout drinker, but I've blacked out a few times.
I just couldn't remember.
Yeah. Exactly. So I gave it a go, and then former friend, we'd been romantically at times, but a former friend invited me to the women's Final Four or tournament up in Minneapolis, saying, oh, it's, you're close by, and it's not that close. It's a 6-hour drive across the whole, because Wisconsin's kind of a wide state. So going from Milwaukee to Minneapolis, I think it was, I don't know, maybe it's 4.5. I don't know. It was a decent drive. But anyway, I was like, sure, why not? So I partied, a little bit, and I know the last time I smoked weed was on the drive there. It was that drive to Minneapolis.
Like the last time?
The very last time I smoked weed. So that was, I think that would have been, it was like March 31st, I think, 1995. So it's been, 30 years since I smoked weed. Yeah. Anyway, but I drank the rest of the weekend, and then I'm in Minneapolis, right? And I'm like, I want to go see Way 12. So I went to Way 12, slightly hungover.
What is that?
Way 12 was the halfway house I was in.
Oh, okay.
In 85.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 10 years later.
Alumni coming back.
Right. So, and, of course, I got people asking me questions, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you got to stay sober, man. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And this is not working. So on the way drive back, I'm like, I'm going to get sober. This is it. I'm done. So for April 2nd was my sobriety date for 7 years. And so if you've done the math, 5 years, then 2, now, and then a few months here and there, I don't count those, and then 7. So that's 14 years on top of 20, and then 23. So it's been 38 years of actual, celebrating. Now, I can tell you, I did my first 4th step in 1990. It wasn't 95. I'd say it was summer of 90. No, it was 96. 1996, I did my first 4th step and 5th step. I didn't go any further, really. I guess I probably put the book on the shelf and took it down, but I didn't really go any further than that. But it's funny. Yeah, I will say this. Even though I wouldn't say it was the best 4th and 5th step, it was. But I got some relief out of it. I felt like I was a part of AA. It's like I'd been around AA at that point for it was 95, so 96, so 10, 11 years, and I'd never done a 4th, 5th step. So I kind of felt a part of it. I was like, hey, I've finally done a 4th, 5th step. Hey, I can actually talk about it in meetings now, and not be giving it lip service. Basically lying, right? Which I wouldn't do, but. I remember we had a joke back then. A friend of mine would say, he said he wanted to get a T-shirt that said, "Go ahead and take my inventory. I don't," because there's so many people that never did 4th and 5th steps.
There still is.
It still is true. It's a true statement. So that was my first 4th and 5th step, and then the guy that I was sponsoring me at the time tried to sleep with my girlfriend. Or it's not quite like that, but it is like that. There's some nuance to it, but it was still felt like a betrayal, And so I went sponsorless for a little while, and then I got Bob J. be my sponsor, and.
Heard a lot about him.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever met him.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you would know, but
yeah,
I've heard his name a lot.
Yeah. I love Bob J. He's helped a lot of people.
Yep, that's what
not sure he was the right guy for me. He was the right guy for the time, I guess, but, I don't know if there was the right person at that time. You know what I mean? I know when I asked Christopher to be my sponsor, that he was the right guy at the right time. No question. And the man that ultimately saved my life, I
had a number of men come through my life that could have helped me had I been willing.
Right. Yeah.
In those early days, I did a lot of blocking, parrying. Always looking at it like I got a shield on one hand and a sword on the other, and everything they're trying to offer me, I'm trying to tell them why that don't apply to me, and you don't understand. And
I think that I had a lot of that going on because I had a head full of AA. I had by this point,
tough when you're young.
Yeah, I mean
to bust through that young superhero kind of complex thing that you have.
By the time Christopher was sponsoring me, let's see, what year was that? It was 2000. I was 3.5 years sober when so that would have been
from 2002.
So 2005. It would have been 2005. So I'd been around 20 years at that point.
Do you know Christopher long before that?
I saw him get his 20 year. So yeah. That would have been 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't do those. I struggle with. I guess I struggle with math. I don't know.
Yeah, 2004, he got his 20 year, and I was there for that. He was going to the same men's meeting that I was.
So you knew him for a little while.
I knew him for a little while. Yeah, and one of the things he said at that time, he said, "If you've been around a while and you're struggling, I can help you." And I heard that.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was a independent manufacturer's rep. One of my thousands of jobs I've had. I had my own company as an independent manufacturer's rep in the roofing and siding industry, and I was I was repping manufacturers and selling to wholesalers. I had a lot of second, third tier products, so I wasn't making much, but I was, I don't know.
Surviving.
I was surviving. I had 5 kids. Yeah. So I had my wife's at the time had 2 stepdaughters that I'd raised since they were little, and then we had 3 together. So what I was making wasn't really enough, honestly. My father had died in 2003. My dad died in 2003. I inherited some money, and we proceeded to go through that. I managed to put some away in an annuity. Terrible investment, but it did keep it from getting spent.
Protected it anyway.
It did protect it. It's worth about the same amount I put in it.
Yeah.
Now, which is crazy, but, at any rate.
I've always heard those are dumb investments.
Oh, they're not good. Yeah. I had a Series 7.
I just had somebody close to me.
I was at Merrill Lynch, had a Series 7. Thought I'd be like Bill, be a stockbroker back in late 90s. And that was a time when you could throw a dartboard at the newspaper and pick a stock, and it would do well. I mean, everything was going up, Any rate, I didn't do well. It was a tough gig to get started. But plus, I had some things going against me. ADHD probably didn't help, but I don't know. It didn't hurt because I was doing different things all the time. So I didn't find that to be a huge thing. I think one of the things I had a problem with was I was, at that point, 98, 30 years old. I'd looked like I was 18. So it's hard to convince someone to give you millions of dollars when you look like you're 18. The guy always said that, it helps to have a little gray in your beard when you're, or your hair when you're trying to convince people to give you their money. But at any rate, that's another story for another time. I don't remember where I was. We were talking about Christopher and me getting with Christopher. So I will talk at least about my relapse in 2000, or my sobriety date. I'd gotten rid of Bob as Jay as my sponsor. I got this other guy, I don't even remember his name, and he was a good guy. I just I'd been lying to Bob, and I don't know. I just wasn't
doing what alcoholics do.
I do what alcoholics do, even though I was supposedly sober. And so I started I was working in a restaurant, waiting tables at the time. So I was around a lot of drinking, around a lot of people drinking with impunity. Again, yeah. And I started going to liquor stores and casing out what I might buy. I didn't tell anybody that I was doing that. If I'd told somebody I'd done that, would have taken the wind right out of that sails. I know you know what I'm talking about. If I'd talked about it rather than just doing it. And next thing you know, the planets aligned, right? I had the little kids. Lynn was working. The older kids were gone because they would have been like, what the heck are you doing? But the little kids were too young to understand. My stepdaughters were just, they would have been like, John Michael was drinking wine, Mom. Anyway, so I drank. And I didn't drink a lot. I got a little bit of a buzz, and then I stopped. And then my wife gets home. We're both working at the restaurant. And she gets home from her shift. And I go, I'm going to go out. And she goes, why? Oh, I'm going to go meet some of the, servers at Fridays, TGI Fridays. She's like, well, you might drink. Oh, I don't know. And, I'd unleashed the beast. I'd
Let it
had
out of the cage.
I let it out of the cage, and it was hungry. I mean, sobriety, who cares? I just drank. So, sobriety's gone.
That's gone.
That's gone, right?
That
so
button,
might as well, might as well do it right, So I did. I went and had a few, and I don't know how, all I know is I drove home, one,
did you?
Yeah, one eye over, and I'm driving a F-150 with a stick shift.
I've done plenty of driving with one eye closed.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm almost a pro at it, man.
Right.
I know that one eye shut.
I really,
no hands.
I actually didn't have to leave the neighborhood because where we lived, TGI Fridays was connected to the neighborhood. So, but I did have to negotiate some streets.
Still had to go.
And I could, and certainly if there'd been a cop around, he could have, I could have easily gotten a DUI. But anyway, here's what I've been telling myself, is that I can still be a good father and a good husband.
This don't mean anything.
This don't mean anything, right? So the first thing I do when I walk in the door is I start folding laundry. Because with 5 kids, as you can imagine, we do laundry every freaking day.
That's funny because, there was a couple times in my story too where I was like in trouble with her. And I found myself doing laundry.
Yeah.
Trying to work myself,
Right.
I'm okay.
I'm a good dad. I'm helping out.
Man.
I'm contributing. That's right. So
little kid.
Yeah, my contributions
sucks,
at that time.
Them little bitty clothes.
Oh yeah. So those were the times when I was. It might have been after that. It was probably after that. Yeah, they weren't wearing those yet. But later on, when I would be folding laundry and I'd find that the teenagers had thongs, I was like, oh, hell no, I'd throw them out. Well, they were on to me, right? So they just started washing them in the sink.
Yeah.
And hanging them in the bathroom.
On her own, man.
That's right.
Dad will toast them if you run them through the laundry.
Because I wasn't having it. And I was like, oh, hell no, you're way too young to be wearing that. Anyway.
You didn't get caught that night?
No, I did. Oh yeah, no, she came
that
in.
night.
Oh yeah, she was like, yeah. I remember she called her sponsor because she's in the she's sober, still sober, so she hadn't relapsed. So she's let's see, she would have 29 years now.
Wow.
So next January she'll have 30.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, she was like a year behind me. Year and change behind me at that time. She comes in and says, you're drunk. I'm like, oh, I had a couple. Or you've been drinking, whatever. I had a couple.
And you didn't try to lie.
Oh, no, I had a couple.
Man, my gut reaction is lie.
Yeah, well, I mean, at that point, I did lie to myself. I said I had a couple, No, I'm freaking...
So you did lie, but not totally lie.
Right, I'm freaking drunk.
The old thing, like a cop pulls you over. How many you had? I've had a couple.
Yeah, right. No, I'm drunk. I drank drinks. At any rate, I wake up with a hangover. I go out and she's up, I can tell shit's going down, right? I don't know what it is, but shit's going down. And I'm hungover, so I get, I'm a smoker, so we don't smoke in the house, so I'm out in the garage drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette. And I know the booze is like right in front of me, hidden somewhere. I don't remember where it is hidden. I had a work table there, tool table type thing. And she lets me, have my first cigarette and wake up. And then she comes to me and says, okay, I've done this, this, and this. I've talked to Billy H. and so your sponsor, and you got to leave. I don't know where you're going. I don't know if you're going to get sober or not, but you got to leave. I got to protect my sobriety.
I don't care what you do, but you ain't staying here.
Right. Yep. Exactly. and if you, I'm gonna, for people listening, if you're in a relationship with an alcoholic, it's exactly what you should do. She did exactly the right thing. I didn't like it at the time, but she did exactly the right thing. So
most people don't have the guts to do that.
One night relapse and I'm homeless. So that's the consequences, right?
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. So I ended up not knowing what to do. So I went to the healing place.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I went to detox. Yep. I was in there with a great kid that I'm not a kid anymore. I mean, he's just a few years behind me now, I guess. But he was a kid at the time. He's still sober too, so we have similar sobriety dates. He's a few days ahead of me, I think. And that kid's father was a really good dude. Helped me in Al-Anon later, and AA dude and Al-Anon dude. Died sober. So, died from cancer, from Agent Orange or whatever, Vietnam stuff. Yeah. But so I got sober, and that was my last drink. Was a one night relapse.
So your 2002 sobriety date is come out.
That was right there.
Your detox and recovery coming from the healing place.
Yeah. I didn't stay at the healing place. I just went to detox, and then I ended up going. I stayed there for a few days, and then I went to a halfway house. That halfway house is no longer existed because the owner who got sober, the guy that started it, went back to smoking crack. I mean, it's not funny. It's actually super sad.
It is. It's tragic, but we laugh at these. And the book talks about that. Sometimes we laugh at these seemingly tragic things.
Right.
What else you going to do?
Yeah, because, I mean, he turned it into a flop crack house. It was a halfway house helping people, and then it turned into a flop crack house. Yeah. And then, of course, was
my understanding is that of all drugs, that's like one of the ones that sweeps you so damn quickly out of into La La Land. I know meth is terrible too, but people talk about crack man being a whole different monster. I've never done it.
Yeah, I never did either. I remember witnessing someone doing it.
Oh, did you? I've never even seen it.
We went on a 12-step call, and he still had some left. And he said, "I'm not doing fucking shit until I'm done with this stuff.
Till I'm out."
Right.
Makes sense to me.
Right. And I mean, and he did. He's just, they're doing his thing, and we're like, And then when he was done, I think we took him to detox. I don't know. I don't remember it. I don't actually remember what happened.
Sometimes that's the way it goes, man. I picked up a guy at the airport at midnight, and he was like, "Can I stop and get a drink?" We were taking him to detox, and
right.
Come out there was that. We had a 3-mile ride, and he's got like a 15-pack of White Claws. I'm like, he could have got like a 22 or something, or got a double deuce or something. But he got a box.
He's
of
pounding them.
He was pounding them, but he couldn't get too many.
No.
And then something as lightweight as a freaking White Claw. From what I understand, I've never had one.
I don't know. Yeah, nothing about them.
They're seltzer water with a little bit of alcohol in them.
Yeah,
I don't know. They're super lightweight. They're less than even a beer or something.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
That's what my understanding is.
Gotcha.
I haven't studied it, but I know I see people teasing people about drinking them, like back in the days of the Zimas, And
there's someone I know who drinks them like all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know that actually.
Seems that way.
Buys it by the pallet. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Right.
I'm not saying he's not.
People. Yeah. When you're purchasing big quantities, you're probably using it. But I run into some people now and again, clients that have these amazing bourbon collections.
Yeah,
and they'll tell you that bottle right there is $300. That bottle right there is $3,000. Mm-hmm. And they're all full.
Yeah.
They won't crack them open because they lose their value, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And by all accounts, the person isn't a drinker. Really, I mean, they drink a little bit, but they're not alcoholic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. They got this tons of liquor, and it's almost like,
we didn't talk
a real
about
alcoholic. Yeah. None of this shit would be here.
That's right.
Those would be empty bottles.
We didn't talk about my parents, but both my parents drank. I cannot diagnose them as alcoholics.
Do you think they were? I know that little thing about we don't diagnose, but
yeah. So
we also know.
Right. Yeah. I
level.
don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know. I know both of them were spiritually sick, for sure. I believe both of them have had consequences from drinking. But I've known that both of them lived their lives and continue to drink and not have major issues. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, both my mom's brothers, I would have said they were alcoholics, but like not too long ago, the one that's living today, he just decided this wasn't working for him anymore, and he stopped. And he might have a martini here with dinner once in a while or whatever, you know, but he just doesn't. He just stopped. And my older uncle, he's the one I used to stick my finger in his whiskey and water.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I never knew him before he was retired. So, like, as long as I can remember, he's been retired, and he sat on his recliner and watched TV and stacked cigarette butts and drank whiskey. And his wife, my Aunt Janet, would refill it all day. He wouldn't even get up except for to go pee.
Oh my
She
gosh.
would get him new packs of cigarettes and get him fill up his.
That's all he
drinks and
did. How
stuff.
long did it take for him to die like that?
He lived to be like 87
Really?
years old. He got too old to drink and smoke. Like, he couldn't do it anymore almost.
Oh, wow.
He was still like functioning and stuff.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't.
He didn't do any activities. He didn't go mow the lawn or anything.
No.
He just sat in a recliner and drank
There
him.
was a couple times, like, I remember a couple times when he went squirrel hunting with us.
Okay.
But he couldn't go 50 yards from the car.
Yeah, right, because he's smoking and drinking. That's all he does.
Yeah, that's all he does.
Oh, my gosh.
And, but he lived to be old.
That doesn't make sense to me at all.
And like I said, at some point, there was like this stop that, you know, where higher power stopped him or what happened, and he just stopped doing the smoking and the drinking. Mm-hmm. But then it was just, off into
gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
But I think he lived to be 87 or some crazy shit like that.
Wow.
Been doing that, smoking since he was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, like him and my mom, Uncle Gerald used to smoke, but not a lot. But my mom said she started smoking when she was 10. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she had a cigarette on her way to the hospital when she had the stroke that killed her.
Oh, wow.
And she never...
Right.
She smoked all her life.
All her life, yeah.
Made it to 72.
Yeah.
Which ain't too bad for smoking all your life, really.
Yeah, no.
I mean, we just lost two friends in our group in their middle 40s from cancer.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
It is
Two,
crazy.
is it two?
Yeah.
I know we lost.
Marshall and Josh. I don't know if you remember Marshall.
I don't remember Marshall.
Might have been that window you weren't around for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to different meetings. You know.
Anyway,
so
back to you.
Back to, you know, ultimately, the reason I drank is I didn't work the 12 steps. You know, that fifth step. I mean, I got into a step study and I just did it lip service. I remember doing a fourth and fifth step with Bob J. I rehashed the one I did previously. And of course, you know what happened? I got exactly what I put into it. Nothing. You know? I remember taking the book off the shelf or, you know, reading the 6th and 7th step, and I'm going, you know, we look and see if we've made a good foundation. You know, did we try and make mortar without sand? And I remember sitting there going, yeah, I've made mortar without sand. You know, this is not a good fourth or fifth step.
That's a little self-defeating at the same time, too. You know, a little bit like, if you could trick yourself into thinking that you'd done it well.
Yeah, but I didn't.
But you couldn't.
I couldn't. I knew too much. You know, and like I was saying, I was talking about when I was a traveling salesman, I was listening to a lot of tapes, CDs actually, but I was listening to speakers like Scott L., who we, you know, think a lot of, and some others.
Got a Scott L. book under that.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. And I was listening to that back in, you know, the early 2000s. And I knew I wasn't doing the deal, you know, and I knew that the reason I was struggling and the reason I was at that point addicted to playing poker. When I came to Christopher and asked him to be my sponsor. My ex at the time was saying, John Michael, if you don't quit this poker shit, I'm through. Over a period of about 6 months, I'd gotten so into it. And it all started with watching freaking poker on ESPN, the World Series of Poker, and when Chris Moneymaker, I can't believe I remembered that name, won. And I was watching that, and I was like, I could do that. I'm a pretty good poker player. I wasn't that great, but I could do the math stuff. It's the bluffing and the reading other people I'm not super great at. Playing the odds and figuring out, whether I should be in a pot or not. I could do that stuff. At any rate, I still held my own at some, but I got so into it. I ended up having poker tournaments. I bought all these expensive chips. I tried to go back and find chips like I had. You can't get them anymore. But I had these Clayco chips that came from a real casino called the Hideaway, and I'd bought them on eBay. Paid too much for them at the time, but if you were to try and find them now, you'd pay thousands. Anyway, so I had all these. I just was into it. I made a couple of different poker tables. One had like the real felt, that like a really high-end poker table has, and I was into it. Like an alcoholic really does get into stuff, and
your substitute.
That was my substitute because I had a problem with no solution. The solution before was drinking, but now the problem, when you're not working the steps, you don't have a solution. AA's solution works, but you got to do it. Yeah. And I wasn't doing it. So I was doing some goofy shit, getting addicted to one thing or another. And the thing that kind of sort of brought me to my knees was the poker. And I was just into it, and I remember at a time when I hadn't played for a while, and I think I was already working with Christopher. I was. And Christopher, when he said, when I first started working with him, he says, John Michael, I'm not going to tell you that you have to quit playing poker, but I'm going to tell you that once we go through these steps, you're not going to need to. Right? But what I heard was, I'm not going to tell you that you got to quit playing poker. I heard the other part too, and I kind of, because I've been around long enough, I knew what he meant, but I still, focused in on, I'm not going to tell you that you can't play poker. My wife went out of town for a business trip. She'd gotten it, long story. Anyway, she went out of town, and first thing I did after I dropped her off was I went straight over to the boat, and I got myself $101 because that was kind of my thing, and I sat at the limit table because I did much better playing limit than I did no limit. And I breathed a sigh of relief, like that first drink. That's exactly right. Yeah, just like that. And then I proceeded to lose the money, whatever, or won. I don't remember. Didn't matter.
That's another funny thing, man. I hear people talk about, me and Dad talk about it, like, because just now the Derby went by, and he's got all these buddies that win all this money because they know how to play the ponies. And I don't believe a thing of that, you might win sometimes, but I don't think, there's no way you come, those things are not as big in money making as they are for people to be making money off of them.
Right.
There might be
I've heard stories.
Individuals here and there.
I've heard stories like my current wife's ex, who has some big problems. Alcoholism isn't probably half of it. He did some things to her that you should never do. Stuff like that. But he won big a few times. Now, I don't know how much he lost.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But, he doesn't have a lot of money. So he won big a few times. Like he bought a car from one, he won thousands, enough to buy a brand new car. on a race. So, I mean, I don't know whether he wins more than he loses, but I would guess he.
I said there's probably those individuals out there.
Yeah.
I know there are those individuals out there to do it, but you
I
run
always
into
donate.
a rare dude that says, "I lose all my money every time I go."
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm playing with fire when I gamble because I don't at the track because I don't do it very often. But I did bet on Derby this year, and for a change, I won. I mean, I had a dollar exacta box. So I won $20.
Yeah,
and then my wife has a good friend who is engaged or dating the trainer that was training the horse that won. So she bet on that one. So between the two of us, we won like $30. Came out, I don't know, whatever, $25. Because I paid $30 into the app to be able to bet. Yeah. So
I cannot gamble.
Yeah.
I can't. It sends some kind of anxiety into me that
does it?
I've never been able to do it. Man. We would play pool at the bars and stuff, and then somebody would say, "Let's play for $1," and I'd fall apart.
Yeah, I hear you.
I just can't do it. There's some anxiety. I've been down the boat a couple times. I cannot do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't sit with my nature.
It makes me sick when last time I went to the boat was I don't know. It was one of those, I can do this. I remember what it was. I was at an AA party or a sober party, whatever some friend put on, and I played some poker, just for fun. I don't think there was any money involved. No, there was money. I think it was $5 to buy in and whatever, and it was like a little mini one table tournament, and I won. No, we split it. It was down to 2, and we split the money, and so we all came out like 5. We all doubled our money or something. Yeah. And it was fun, and that was fine. Wasn't a big deal. But
sure,
in my head,
right?
Right. But so I'm like, well, why don't I go? Next thing you know, I was like, a couple of days later, I was like, I'm going to go to the boat.
There's like a phenomenon, a craving thing going on.
I think so. Yeah, it was kind of it's funny how that is, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I ended up losing like $500. And I could afford to lose at that time $500, but $500 was still a lot of money.
Yeah, I was like, can you ever really? But okay,
yeah, I mean,
I could absorb it.
I could. Yes, thank you. I didn't. Not that I could really afford it. I could absorb it. Yeah. So, at any rate.
So tell me about going through the steps with Christopher.
Yeah. So that
when he was 18, his story is, I've heard it enough times that he had so recovery. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, when he was 18 years, he was seeing stuff and seeing people that had some light in their eye that he didn't have. And he started
was listening
saying,
to
hey,
tapes
man.
of S. Scott L.
Yep,
so it's interesting is, when I came to him.
Because it was just shortly after 20.
Yeah. We
21
started.
Or whatever.
He would have, it would have been.
At least if I remember right with
but he would have had 21 at that point. Yeah. Yeah. And it was in the fall. It would have been the fall of 95. I mean, 2000.
Yeah, 2005.
2005. Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes I tell people to refrain from all that timeline stuff, but
Yeah.
you're doing pretty good because most people are not that good at it, and then they waller around and trying to figure it out. And it's like, it really doesn't matter a lot because people really don't care what year it was, really.
No, it doesn't. But I'm sitting in we started out going to coffee shops, and then we ended up in his car after the Tuesday night meeting is when we would meet. And
after the Tuesday night meeting is when I met with him too.
Yep. We initially, I was just talking to him, and he says, you gotta ask me. If you want me to sponsor you, you gotta ask me. So I said, well, you be my sponsor, and then so I had to go tell. I think at that time, I think Bob J was my sponsor again, and I had to go tell Bob, thank you. I'm going to go through the steps with Christopher. And
did he coach you through that?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what I said, but
I just wonder because that's part of the formula that he's given me. Is,
right.
Do you have a sponsor? Do you currently have somebody that you consider your sponsor?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, then we're going to fire him, and I'm going to teach you how to do that.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So we did that. Yes. And And then we got started in the book. And then, we've talked about this, but, my true moment of surrender. Because, I'm at this point got 20 years of going to meetings and listening to people and listening to speakers. And I've got a head full of AA, tons of AA, not quite as much as he does because I think he's got a year more, But I got, at this point, 20 years of AA in my head. And so we're arguing sometimes.
That ain't going to work out well.
Yeah, but, he's getting through because, Christopher's good. You know? And of
course, he was probably a lot different then, like that. He ain't going to stand much for that arguing today.
Yeah, probably not.
You disagreeing with him, it's going to get slammed down pretty hard.
Yeah, probably. But anyhow.
Oh, it will.
Yeah. Anyhow, we, of course, I know I wouldn't argue.
People do.
I know.
Every day.
Yeah, I know. But,
in his field, in his work.
Yes, 100%.
100%. Dealing with those newcomers.
Yeah, he was not a counselor at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was.
Probably was like just
he was in school he was in school. He hadn't graduated yet, I don't think.
What's that, 20 years ago now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's been in, he probably was.
I think he was at
He might have been advancing his career, his education.
Yeah, he was finishing up his master's and getting his MSW because, that's what my wife has, an MSW. And her LCSW. She doesn't specialize in addiction. She does specialize in trauma. But anyhow, I remember sitting in Christopher's car, and I don't remember exactly what we're working on, but I believe we're getting ready to do the 4-step. Something like that. Hell, we might have just been in the 2nd step. I don't remember. And he says to me, "You know what, John Michael, I just don't think you're getting it. And you're taking up a seat for someone that can help. That's going to get it. So I don't think I don't think this is going to work out." I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And that's when I had my surrender. I said, you know what? He's right. I still think I know what I need. I still got some idea of how to stay sober. And I have no fucking clue how to stay sober. Because I myself am powerless and my life is unmanageable. Left to my own devices, I'm screwed. And that, for me, is the first step. Once you finally get it, you realize you're fucked. I'm fucked. I have no power to stay sober. I have no power to control anything. And what am I going to do with that? Well, AA's got this program. So here's some hope. Here's the 2nd step. We got some hope. We can restore you to sanity. And, and then there's the 3rd step, and that's a decision to actually do it. I'm going to turn my will and my life for the care of God. What's that life? Well, I'm going to turn the fact that I can't do anything. So what do I got to do? I got to do the next step, which is the 4th step. And then, and that's it's not as bad as it seems. I've always had this writer's cramp. I hated writing papers, and I still do. Of course, I just finished a 33-page paper with the bibliography and everything else, but for my master's. But I hated writing. But you know what? It's really not that hard when you break it down like Christopher, like we do. Just list some fucking names. List the ones that come up in your head and spit them out. I love this story. You may not have heard of it. You may have. It's a guy that was around and gone. Was one of Christopher's first sponsees, if not his first. And he talked about how when he was spitting names and writing them out, that cows came up. So he wrote it. He thought it was crazy, but he didn't know what it was, but he wrote it. And, when he got to the second column, he's like, I don't know about cows. I don't know what they're, I don't have anything to write there. And he got to the third column, he didn't have anything to write there either. Finally, he got to to what did you do? And he goes, and I realized I would go out cow tipping with my buddies, and I feel bad about it. So, don't think it, write it. Let God guide the pencil. And
the fourth step is certainly not a thinking exercise.
Yeah, I'm going to set the sails and let God direct the wind. So I did. I had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps by going through all 12 steps with Christopher. And I wasn't even done with the 12 steps when I started sponsoring a guy. And
I don't think you should be.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Scott Lee says you ought to get the guy sponsoring when he's in his amends.
100%. Yeah, I think I was before amends, though.
Really?
I do, yeah.
I was 6 months sober, and Christopher tossed somebody at me out of his group.
Yeah.
I was through the work, though. I got through the work quickly.
And
I was desperate.
It was God all over that, And that guy's not sober anymore, but,
you are.
It kept me sober. Yeah. And I got to watch God. I got to watch God work through me because I would say shit like you've experienced.
Yep.
I have no idea where that came from.
Yeah.
But that was fucking brilliant. I needed to hear that too.
Yeah.
And it was God speaking through me. It's like, holy cow.
That's one of the great things about sponsorship is like you get the points no matter if they're successful or not.
Right.
And it ain't really a point system, but you understand. You get that. You get the juice. You get the lift, whether if they get it or don't.
Yeah.
Takes a little bit to understand that though. Like in the beginning, because my first, just like Bill, my first half dozen didn't work out.
Right. I have not had good luck with newcomers, sponsoring newcomers at all. Huh. That was the first one, and I don't know why. I just haven't. And I've had some guys. I remember sponsoring one guy who was kind of just like me. He came from he came from a family that had a little bit of money, and he didn't have that high. He had sort of a high bottom like mine. It was pretty high bottom. I mean, my bottom was sober. My bottom was sitting in Christopher's car when he's telling me, "I don't think you're getting this." At 3.5 years sober. I mean, my experience is that alcoholism will get you whether you're drunk or not. I mean, it's a problem, and the solution that works that I've found is the 12 steps.
And what seems to be, I mean,
and if
who else is offering a solution to this? Really,
no,
honestly,
and the thing is it was figured out in the early 1900s with Carl Jung.
Yeah,
spiritual.
Do you remember where you did your fifth step with Christopher?
His apartment.
Did you?
Or his condo.
The one he's in today.
Yeah. He's been in that condo for
a long time.
Yeah.
Me too. I've done a few fifth steps in there.
Yeah, I've slept on that couch once.
I slept on it a few times.
I was sober, but my ex and I were having problems, and my ex and I had problems. We should have gotten divorced a lot sooner than we did, but it worked out the way it worked out the way it was supposed to. And we just weren't happy. I remember Christopher saying to me, "John Michael, I just don't think you're happy in your marriage." And I was like, "Oh, I'm happy enough. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about." But
I was on that couch last night.
Were you?
We do a Sunday night thing at certain times of the year where I go over and we watch goofy TV and shoot the shit and hang out together. And
nice.
This is that season.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. Anyhow. Well,
So did you? I'll just run through some stuff. At that point in time, because I know there's been an evolution too, and and it gets a little funny sometimes, and there's some people that take some exception to it. But people all over the world do steps a little different here and there, and in town, people over here do them a little different. People over there do them.
I don't do them the same way Christopher does. I mean, close.
Yeah, they're all close.
I've added,
One big huge difference is that he has this, right now we're doing these 8-step prayers where you pray for forgiveness on everybody on your 4-step.
And we always did that. I did that too, yeah.
I was curious.
Yeah. I've changed that some because it's in the book. In the book, that's in the 4th step.
It's in the 4th, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what Christopher moved it up closer to the 9th, or not him. A teacher taught him that is not his doing, to move it up closer to the 9th step to get it closer to where you're ready to go out and do this, to get that forgiveness in your heart and have it fresh when you go out to ask for forgiveness from these other people.
But I get guys doing it then just to get them started, and to help them.
I don't think it's wrong.
Help them look at what their part was, because if you're still so focused on the anger, it's hard to look at your own part. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I did that way. But I also have,
as far as your amends,
I'm not sure. I'm honestly, I think I've only had 1 or 2 get to the 9th step. I'm not a good sponsor.
I tell you, I have found it terribly difficult today in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe half of my recovery of getting people to do their amends.
Yeah,
they'll do a couple or a handful,
right?
And then they that's enough,
right? Yeah, I'm halfway there. I've got the promises.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not even halfway. It's before you're halfway through. You're halfway,
right?
How do you feel about your amends with Christopher? Like as far as today, do you feel like you did a significant number of them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too. There was a desperation in my heart on that whole prison sentence thing where I didn't feel like I had any options to not do. Yeah. And it's like, what am I putting off that's giving these folks some feeling that it's optional?
Right. I don't know.
I don't either, but it's a piece of my recovery, a piece of my sponsorship that I'm really struggling with. Because I don't want to kick them to the curb. They're a lot better than they used to be by then, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they did a couple amends. And, and maybe that's kind of like your story. You put all this time together here and there, but had these periods of slips and stuff. But you were probably getting better the whole way through. You were getting somewhat better, little by little by little. And it ended up finally getting to where you're at today.
Right.
And it took what it took.
Mm-hmm.
So at some level I'm going, okay, it's going to take what it takes with this guy. But there's another part of me that's like, if you're not going to do this work, kick bricks.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be that guy either.
What God does with us, it takes the worst of what we've done and gives us the power to help people with it.
Yep.
And that's, Christopher talks about how, all we've got is our story, but that story has power, and it has the power to help others. And my high bottom drunk, high whatever. my high bottom end to my drinking isn't unique.
Nope. I didn't hit
it's
the bottom.
It's different, but it's but it helps people.
Yep.
And I don't know if I don't know if I have a problem with the hardcore newcomers because I don't relate to them, but that's why I've had struggle sponsoring them, but all I know is I've stayed sober, like you said.
Yeah. And I've had some kind of phenomenal success.
Mm-hmm. I know. I know some of your sponsees.
A ton of dudes.
I know your sponsees, and you've done
really good.
You're a great sponsor, and, so there you go.
I don't know how that and it doesn't seem real,
right? I want to talk about 2 amends real quick because I think they're important. One of them is kind of more of a fun story. We go back through our lives, right? In the 4-step, and then and then when we're talking about things we owe or whatever. And I, after I got asked not to come back to the Vermont Academy, and I ended up in Philadelphia with my roommate from the Vermont Academy, and we would steal cigarettes from the grocery store because we didn't have a whole lot of money. We were making minimum wage, which was $3.35 or whatever it was.
I remember that number.
Yeah. And so we, back then, because of people like us, they don't have cigarettes out in the grocery store anymore. It's behind the counter. But we'd steal cartons at a time. Just walk in, grab a carton, walk out. And I don't know how many cartons I actually stole. I didn't know, but I threw a stab at it. It wasn't that many, really, because I wasn't there for but a few weeks, really, a couple of months. So it wasn't that much. But we came up with a number. Christopher and I did. He says, so I want you to go get cartons of cigarettes and take them down to the detox at the Healing Place. Okay, I'll do it. And then he said, now don't get the cheap stuff. Because I was smoking cheap cigarettes at the time. Because I'm cheapskate and cigarettes gotten expensive. He says, you didn't steal the cheap stuff. You stole the good stuff, so take down the good stuff. So I did. I went and got Marlboros, Marlboro Lights. I got Cools, And I took cartons down to the. And I did it. I didn't do it all at once, but I did it a few times. And that was that amends.
What's the line? These amends take innumerable forms.
Right. Yeah. And then, of course, my father. I want to talk about that amends. By that time, my father died. Before my father died, there had been some conflict, and then he got sick with cancer. And so I remember I went to go talk to him, and it had been the first time in a while that I had talked to him, and I went to go see him. And he was back in his office laying on the couch, and I went in there and sat down, and he looked at me, and we were quiet for a while, and he looked at me, and he just kind of nodded his head. And I'm pretty sure what he meant was, bullshit's done, we're over, we're moving on. That's what I took it to mean. So, but that wasn't really an amends, but it was some peace, because from there until he was gone, we were fine. And which was great. Yeah. That was I'm glad we had that moment. But I still have some work to do as far as, my amends. So I wrote a letter, and I took it to where his ashes are in Austria.
Oh, wow. That's going to length.
Yeah. Well, fortunately I was going over for a family reunion. Around the time I was, and it was like, okay, Christopher, I've got this amends, and I'm going over to family reunion, and I'm going to make these amends. So it was cool. Yeah. It was really cool. And then I went and burned it. I read the letter, and then I went and burned it, and that was super cool. It was really, he's, surrounded by the Austrian Alps.
Oh, wow, very cool.
Yeah, I can show you pictures from his gravesite. It's beautiful. So I wanted to talk about those because they're a little different and worth mentioning, and help set me free, And it's where nothing's gaining on me, Now I've got probably some new stuff to figure out, when I.
We always do.
Yeah.
It's always a work in process.
Right. Yeah. I am no saint.
Thank God you don't have to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been one of the most important lines in that book, man. It's like progress, not perfection, and we are not saints, and it's other stuff that lets me off the hook a little bit. I don't have to be a holy person in here. I remember as I've shared this quite a bit with other people. After my divorce or during the divorce, I really worked hard, because if I didn't, I was going to go crazy. Like, it's the hardest thing I've ever been to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I would do a candlelight vigil every night. I'd light a candle for each kid. I would light a candle for my, at that point, still wife and her boyfriend. And I'd pray for all of them. And I would go, I kept my apartment immaculate. I just was like on it, because if I didn't, I was going to go crazy. I was going crazy anyways, but I just had to do that. Mm-hmm. And I'd never been closer to God than I was at that time. The amount of prayer, going to a lot of meetings. I was working with a couple of guys, taking them through the steps. I was going down to Gethsemane quite a bit, and just staying there, doing silent retreats by myself, walking around the grounds there. eating that cheese that I love so much. That's no longer, they don't make anymore. So yeah, that was a good time. And I remember there was something happened, and I was just so down on myself. And Christopher said, since when did John Michael have to be perfect? Well, I gotta be, goddammit. No, I need to cut myself some slack. Yeah. So progress, not perfection. Yeah. So at any rate, I want to talk about one more thing. And I don't know, we can wrap it up, I guess.
Whatever you want, man.
I want to talk about the pandemic.
Cool thing about this, we really don't have a big timeline issue.
Right, yeah. I want to talk about the pandemic.
People can't listen to it all at one time. They can hit pause and pick it back up next time.
There you go. I do listen to podcasts. I am kind of a fan of shorter podcasts, but I listen to some that are long too. So
I'm a long form dude.
Yeah.
Hell, I listen to this one dude. Can go 5 or 6 hours.
Does he? Yeah. Wow.
He doesn't actually do that. He has a guy come to his house in Tennessee.
Okay.
Stay a weekend, and they record stuff, and it ends up
over the weekend.
Long.
I gotcha. Well, that sounds really cool,
like
actually.
6-hour podcast.
Right. Yeah.
Wear you out. No, it's really cool. It is. It's pretty cool. And he's an ex-Navy SEAL. I don't know why. I got a Navy SEAL man crush thing going on and had for years. From a long time ago.
One of my classmates from high school went to the Naval Academy and became a Navy SEAL officer.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I saw him at the 10-year reunion, and he was still in it. He wasn't going out in the field though. He was working as like procurement. I think getting them there.
You get to a certain age, you can't do that no more.
Yeah, but 10 years after high school should only be 28. So I don't know.
Yeah, but still, that's hard on you. There's a whole other thing goes on when you do that. We just had a guy come through our place, and he's still around. He's in a local treatment center. He's been struggling.
Yeah,
but he went through buds.
Did he?
Yeah. And then when I heard that, I was like,
oh, right, yeah.
But the interesting thing is like the discipline and the willpower it took to go through that 6 weeks and Hell Week and the whole thing they do at buds.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't kick this shit.
Right. Alcohol still whooped his ass.
Yep.
Yeah. It's cunning, baffling, powerful. Yeah. Alcoholism is crazy.
So I interrupted your story.
So the pandemic. Boy, I tell you, it threw me for a fucking loop. I didn't drink, but I mean, I went from being a sober guy, right? Pretty serene, doing, pretty much, doing pretty good.
Rolling
along, right? I probably wasn't going to enough meetings or sponsor enough guys, but I had a couple of sponsees. I just changed sponsors, actually. I remember it was right 2019 is when I did that, I think. But boy, that pandemic came along, and it's like I wasn't going to meetings. My anxiety was through the roof. I'm like, the preppers are right. I was sort of half-assed prepper, And,
me too.
Yeah, and
Does it scare you? Or just knock you off your pattern, your routine?
I have a level of anxiety that if I'm not doing the program, it gets out of control. I've discovered now.
So you didn't make like the jump to Zoom and... I
didn't make the jump to Zoom very well, no.
Man,
I went to a few meetings on Zoom. I'm going to talk about one other thing too, but so, and it's funny. I mean, I remember saying this. Every time I went to a meeting on Zoom, I felt some relief. It wasn't quite enough, though. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It wasn't the same, for sure.
It wasn't the same. You're not getting the hugs. You're not, I guess you're saying the Our Father, but it's not the same as saying it, or the Serenity Prayer, and it's not the same as saying it in a room with everybody.
And the fellowship and afterwards on the screen
I can tell you,
stuff is terribly difficult.
I can tell you, there's some nights at the Spiritual Underground when we're doing the closing prayer, whether it's the Serenity Prayer or the Our Father. It's usually the Our Father.
We do Our Father almost all the time.
Almost all the time.
Somebody slips up.
Yeah. It's powerful.
It is powerful.
Not every night, but there's some weeks
sometimes it is, man.
Yeah, sometimes it's super powerful. Everyone's just in unison, and it's just like God is in this room right now. you know. I mean, he is anyway, but you can just really feel it saying that prayer. It's pretty awesome.
It is.
I liken it to the international conference. That's
one.
That's power. You know, when you're in the Alamo Dome.
Isn't it time again?
It is. It's this year.
But it's in Canada, I think, ain't it?
It's in Canada, yeah.
I've got it in Detroit the last time, and then the COVID hit.
Right.
And it canceled it.
Yeah.
Me and Christopher had plans. We had a hotel room and everything.
Okay, yeah. I thought Christopher was going to go, but he was talking about it, but I guess he's not, huh?
To Canada?
Yeah.
I have not heard a word about it, man.
Then he's probably not going.
Yeah, I'm about to say no. Because if he was wanting to go, he'd be dragging this dude along with him.
Right. Yeah.
And he'd be saying something to me.
Yeah. I've got my passport. I could go.
I do too.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe road trip.
It's a long drive to Canada.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I would probably fly. But go ahead.
That's a powerful experience. Alamo Dome full of alcoholics.
I imagine,
Lord's
man,
Prayer. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, Christopher's told me about a few of them, and some other guys have too.
Atlanta was the same way too. Yeah. That was pretty powerful. But so yeah, that was definitely. And I've only come out of it in the last year, coming back to the Broad Highway group. Yeah, I was, and part of it. So, I'm going to talk about a guy. I'm not going to mention a name, but there's this guy that was going to the other men's meeting that I was going to. Back when he went to prison for trying to kill his wife, I had custody of his kids. Actually, after he'd gone, my ex and I ended up with custody of his kids for about 6 months. And that didn't work out, and it was horrible. It wasn't horrible. They liked living with us. It just wasn't working out, and it was tough. No fault of theirs. I mean, they had two alcoholic parents. One of them was a rageaholic, and the other one couldn't get sober. And God bless them. I know that they're still, they've got their own journeys. I feel like we provided a good, 6 months for them, but I don't know. I can only hope that. But I was going to that men's meeting, and he was showing up. He's now been out of prison for a few years, talking at every meeting. With his 30 years of sobriety. And I'm like, I can't listen to this motherfucker. Do you know? I mean, I couldn't do it. And so I stopped going.
The feeling, man.
So I stopped going to that meeting, right?
Yeah, drive you out of the meeting.
And I was like, I got to get to a different meeting. So, and then it was finally on my birthday last year. I walked in the Broad Highway group and I'm like, oh, thank God, this is where I need to be.
Spiritual Underground.
What did I say?
You said Broad Highway.
Oh, well, that was another great meeting. That was another great meeting.
A great meeting.
But Spiritual Underground, yeah. So, yeah. And
I'm glad you're back, man.
Yeah, me too. Because I feel like I'm back. My anxiety levels have plummeted. I'm not saying I don't, I've been in school and I've been, had some stressful stuff for work too, but,
like I said, back in the pocket.
But yeah, I'm feeling closer to my higher power. When I do feel anxiety, I'm praying, and it's like, I definitely feel back. And the funny, we always used to talk about, back when it was the Broad Highway and the Holy Rollers.
Heard a lot about that.
Yeah, we used to always say, stay in the boat. You got to stay in the middle of the boat. But I can tell you, even if you drift out a little bit, it's really easy to get right back in the middle of it. Even if you get in the water, if you can get out of the water and get dry again and come back in the boat, it's, like we've said.
I've had that experience recently, and
you don't lose.
It was a little trouble for a while, but like once I made the commitment to come back, I was back and I was better in a hurry.
Yeah, and you're right back in the middle of the boat.
Yep.
So and your story's going to help somebody.
That's why, again,
what you got to do.
Our stories are valuable, and that's why I do this podcast.
And, you may not be like me, but you got to put down the baseball bat.
Oh, yeah. I knew that wasn't going to work this time.
Yeah.
And like there's, this is not for this podcast really, and probably should talk about it afterwards. But there's been some people in my periphery that think that that's what I should be doing, and they're like let down by the fact that I am not beating myself up. I'm not like showing enough repentance,
Right.
And I refuse to do that.
No.
And I use some
the worst thing you could possibly do.
I cannot make this a big deal.
Right.
I can't. Well,
No.
what they heard, like you said that earlier about what you say and what they hear.
Right.
What they're hearing me say is this ain't no big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this ain't no big deal.
No.
That's not what I'm saying. Don Majors beats on that all the time.
Yeah.
This big dealism thing that us alcoholics
But
is. It's not good for us to make stuff into a big deal. Anything.
Right. There ain't no more big deals. He used to say, in that great country accent.
And that's this.
I
can't make this
them
into a
girls
big
in them
deal.
flower dresses. I just love listening to him talk.
Me too, man.
Yeah,
We've had
it's
some
cool,
giants
cool.
in our midst, some people that we've been mighty fortunate to be able to listen to, like across the room and stuff. Burns and Dawn specifically, Billy Hogue.
Yeah.
Quite a few men. We really have had some giants to get to witness walk this path and set the example for us.
No doubt. I will say this: when I relapsed after 7 years, I sat in a meeting, and one of those men, I'm not going to say which one of those men you just mentioned said, drinking like you did is like spitting in God's face. I didn't hear a damn other thing that was said at that meeting that night, but I heard that, and I'll never forget that. Yeah, so... And I guess it was kind of true, but
I get
it wasn't
the point,
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. Christopher is so great at like helping some process things like this. He's just I call him the wizard. Mm-hmm. He puts such a sane and humble pillow blanket around it. And that's what it ought to be.
100%. And like that's what I was getting at. You're back in the boat. That's what matters. We all have just today. And you still have the power to help people.
I haven't lost
maybe even more
really,
so because you've got even more power because you've got some more another story to tell.
Yep. Well, the only thing that changed is that date.
That's right.
I can't make it a big deal.
No, 100%.
Well, I remember again my first spiritual underground meeting was just happened to be the church was closed.
Oh.
So they met in Brian Beck's basement.
Mm-hmm.
I probably shouldn't. I told you at the beginning, don't say last names, and I popped off a bunch of them.
Okay, yeah.
But oh well.
Yeah.
And I can almost. It was so impactful to me that I can almost go around the room and point out you were over by the stairs in a painter's outfit.
Right.
You had painter's whites on.
Because I'd probably just come from working late.
It looked like it. It looked like you just walked in from work, man.
Yeah.
And I can remember Frank and Eddie and Fred and Darren and Christopher and Tim. There was a Tim O. Remember him? I don't want to say his last name out loud. We can say it later.
Yeah.
It's got one of the coolest last names I know of.
Okay.
I don't want to have to trim this thing. I don't like editing. It sucks.
Right.
And I can remember all these men that sat around there, and it just impacted me. Like I was sitting there that night going, this is where I need to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right here. There's something here that I don't understand. And it's in hindsight, because at the time I'm just blown away.
And it's
still share.
And it's still there. So if you're in Louisville, Kentucky, and you're a man, or if you're a woman, come on birthday night. But if you're a man, you need to come to the Broad Highway group. Spiritual Underground group, thank you, on Tuesday night at 7:30.
St. Matthew's Baptist Church.
It is a powerful
email me
meeting.
Dan at spiritualunderground.org and I'll send you the address.
Yeah, it is a powerful meeting and worth the trip, And
to me.
It's, and everyone should feel that way about their home group. It's the best meeting, but I've been to a lot of other meetings. It's the best goddamn meeting in Louisville.
Yep, something special's going on there, no doubt.
I mean, and you know something's working when you got, I mean, sure, we get people that drop off.
Oh.
But every meeting's got that. But we've got people getting ships every week.
Yep, and multiples every month on birthday night, man.
Right.
Like what they add up last month? 78 years last month.
Something, yeah. It's going to be.
And it
more.
went from 1, 2, 3, 12, 15, 21, 23.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty good swath through the timeline.
Of course, this month it'll be.
Yeah. No, it's pretty good this month too, man.
No, it's going to be a lot because we got Christopher with 41, 23.
Yep. You and Christopher, no doubt. Yep, celebrating those two.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of others.
He and I have always gotten to celebrate together
list.
at the end of the month. It's always been kind of nice.
Fun. Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about Al-Anon.
Okay.
So just a little bit because I got a lot out of Al-Anon, including meeting my wife, but my current wife. But that was not why I went. I went because I'm going to tell this story because I'm going through the divorce with my ex, and it's near the beginning of the divorce. And it's my first Wednesday with the kids, right? So I got them. Pick them up, and I take them home to my apartment, and I feed them. I make sure they get their homework done. I think I even made sure they got baths, right? And they're, they're old. They're old enough to. They have to go in there and do it themselves. I'm not helping them. I'm not sure about the bath thing, actually. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, I did.
Try and take care of business.
I took care of business, right? And so I dropped them off, and I said, I did this, this, and this, and this, right? And then I'm leaving, and I'm going, I felt so good. And I felt so good because I got an attaboy from her, right? And all of a sudden I go, oh, my God, you fucking Al-Anonic. You are so damn codependent. Holy cow. And I went, there was, at that time, there were some of the people in the group were still doing a Wednesday night late meeting. I don't remember the name of the group. But it was some of the people from the Spiritual Underground and Broad Highway group, because at that time there was both of them. No, at that time there was only the Broad Highway group. The Spiritual Underground hadn't started at that point. Anyway, it was on a Wednesday night, 10 o'clock, 10:30, something like that. So I went to that meeting, and I loved that meeting because I would spill all my shit every week, especially when I was going through it, And it's funny when you got someone going through a breakup, that's all they ever talk about.
Oh, yeah. I got one now.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
I understand.
I wasn't quite
you, man.
Right. I wasn't always that bad. Like, I remember, I had raised my hand up at the Trinity meeting, and it was near the end of the thing, and they're like, John Michael, you want to take us out? And I looked at the time, I said, no, I'm good. And I was. And I had a few people go, really? Yeah, I'm good. Christopher really helped me. Christopher really, the man that saved my life, when the shit hits the fan, he shows up.
He does.
As busy as a man as he is.
Yep.
If he couldn't take my call, he would call me back when he could talk.
Yep.
During the day. Yeah.
There's never been a single time when I've needed Christopher, he was not there for me.
Right. Yeah. And he's a busy dude. Sponsors lots of people. Yeah.
And kind of hermits up to some extent.
Yeah.
He's not attached to his phone like a lot of us, like I am.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's not like he's checking it like all the time, but
no.
When I needed some help, and every single time, yeah.
Yeah.
And I try to model my sponsorship after what he does, what he teaches, and what he does. I want what he's got. I want to be like him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I got through that time. But I've started going Al-Anon quite a bit more, with a little bit more meaning, because I recognize the codependency there. And, of course, I have kids who struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them, but, certainly I've had to recognize that I can't fix, manage, control their lives, even though I still sometimes try a little bit. But I recognize that John Michael, shut up. He's got his own journey, or she's got her own journey, and you trying to tell them what they need to do is not going to help matters.
Yep.
And just drive them away. And I don't know, I don't know if Al-Anon has anything to do with it, but I know God has a whole lot to do with it, and some good sponsorship and working the steps. But I have a good relationship with all 5 of my kids. They still call me. And they're adults. They're on living their own lives. My youngest is, just bought her second house and has a kid. All of a sudden, I turned around and got old. I don't know what the heck happened,
Yeah, same here.
But the good news is I'm sober, and I have God in my life, and I'm doing my best to help others. I'm going to put it out right now that I probably need to get a new guy in my life. I'm not sure, we're getting ready to go through the steps together. So, maybe I'll wait until we're done with that or not, or wait till we get halfway through the 9th step. I'm not sure what my 9th step's going to look like, but we'll find out when I do the prayer work and write and see what comes up.
There's a little bit of a thing where I don't think I pick my sponsees, it's not that.
Right.
God sends them, and then 100%. I got to be real careful on the saying no when
they've
been sent to the master, and about the time I'm not expecting it, some real juicy, hungry person walks in my life, and it's a blast.
Yeah.
Because they want it.
Right.
They're just eating from my fingertips, man.
And then there's times when it's
blast
not.
off. Yeah, but I've been fortunate, man. I've had a whole lot of dudes who wanted to deal and went after it.
That's awesome, man.
And now they're sponsoring people, and their sponsees are sponsoring people, and I got this whole lineage thing going on. It's incredible.
Yeah, I've witnessed it. It's great. Yeah, no question.
So if somebody comes in, I certainly wouldn't have any problem with that. Of course, we do what we do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So, and so, like you said, God's all over sponsorship. So, I'm not worried about it, but I feel like it. I'm putting it out there that
sure.
I'm able and willing.
Yep. Yep.
And I will be traveling, but for work.
Tech will handle that today. Tech will handle that today.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. There's FaceTime.
Got my new guys moved to Madison. It's an hour and 15 minutes away from here.
Right.
And that's what we're going to have to do to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wants to. So
there you go.
I'm going to
That's
support
right.
him.
Make it work.
I wasn't expecting him to move.
Yeah.
That was never in the cards. And then all of a sudden, I'm like,
okay. Well,
but his kids live up there.
That's where he needs to
be.
be.
There's a job for him.
That's
and
where
he can
needs
live close enough to the job that he can ride his e-bike to the kids or to his job. So it's like,
that sounds like a no-brainer.
Looks like
right. God's all over that
I'm
one.
not going to get in the way of that.
No, 100% not.
I'm also not going to say, sorry, man, I can't help you anymore.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Al-Anon. So
cool.
If you're an alcoholic and in recovery, everyone in your support group's an alcoholic.
Sure.
And some of them are sicker than others. So you're definitely affected by alcoholism. So Al-Anon has definitely helped me with my relationships and expand my first step. Now, I know, we can do that in AA, expand the first step, but I'm just saying Al-Anon kind of really did help me.
That's the tool that helped you.
Really was the tool that helped me. And so I would definitely highly recommend Al-Anon for, others. Not just
myself.
like say,
if you're looking for some more, here's a place you could go get some.
That's right. Yeah. Al-Anon.
Just Google Al-Anon.
Yeah, just Google Al-Anon to show up. That's right, 100%.
https:// : No, you don't have to.
Right, that's right. Just Google it. It'll come up.
You only have to spell it right.
Exactly. You don't. Google will know. AI will know.
It's so easy to do.
Right. Big Brother will know.
So I always ask if anybody's got any concluding thoughts, if they got something they want to sign off with, or some message for somebody that might be listening that maybe in your heart you feel that you got some last thing to say.
Well, I know my wife's going to listen to this episode, so I would like to say that I do love her very much.
That's a good thing to do. That might be a first.
We have a pretty good life together.
Yeah,
so,
I like her.
Yeah.
It shows when you're all together.
Thank you. Yeah. So she's looking forward to coming at the end of the month. So when we all celebrate.
Work it out.
Well.
At the end of the month for that. And then we're talking about having you two on here too.
Oh, yeah. Well, we need to do that. We'll have to figure that when that happens. Yeah.
When I do that, I move these two microphones down there, and then I got another one that I use.
Okay. Cool.
And that's the same thing we do when we're doing I Am One Too when we have a guest.
Yes. Yeah. I've listened to all of those. I've enjoyed those very much. I've listened to some of these. I just haven't listened to all of them.
Well, there's 354 of them.
That's right. There's a lot of them.
This for 7 years, man.
That's crazy.
There's not too many podcasts that do that many episodes, man.
Well, so Suzanne and I did a podcast. We did a great. I loved it.
You tell me about it. It's fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
I was tired when we started, and I'm like wide awake now.
We had a lot of fun with it. We only did like one full season, kind of, and she was in school, I was in school. Really was kind of not. It just got put by the wayside. This
is hard to keep up on, man.
Yeah. So
there's a stat out there that says 90% of podcasts don't get to episode 6.
I believe that. We got more than 6, but I don't think there's much more than 10. Maybe 12. Yeah. So the podcast is called Middle Aging, and the topic's kind of topics for middle-aged adults, and. Yep. I'm not saying we ran out of topics. I'm just saying that we just kind of, we got busy. Yeah. And
I picked the perfect niche.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is.
Alcoholics are everywhere. Yeah. There's no shortage of them.
No.
And they love to talk.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah. Yeah, we do. 100%.
I did. I just fell into it, man. Yeah. And again, this was going to be like a group little chat thing, like a round table thing. And it turned into this.
Yeah, no, it's
great.
Like
I said, now I get to interview people from all over the freaking world. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I need to get some of those people. I just got to find some time. I got to find a window to do it once a week.
One thing, one of the things I'm looking forward to doing. My new job is going to be traveling, but for at least for the foreseeable future, I'm just going to have a long drive every day because if it's past 90 miles, they'll put you up. They'll get you a place to stay, pay you per diem. Huh?
And what's that, like 75?
No, the per diem's like...
No, the distance to where you're going.
Oh, yeah, it's like 65. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to have an hour and a half drive, and it's, country roads, so it's not like 65 on a highway where you can get there in 45 minutes. Yeah. Well, that's a little exaggeration, but, it's not like that. It's an hour and a half. And so I'm going to have an hour and a half drive every day.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
twice.
And I need to be there about 7 or earlier. So I got to get up super early.
Yeah.
And actually for the next few weeks, I'm going to be going to Lexington every day. And that's about the same. It's about 65 miles, I think. Something like that. An hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Let's tie a bow around this, man.
Yep.
Any final things?
Nope. I'm good.
Appreciate you being here. I'm glad to
Absolutely.
get to, and I'm looking forward. I'm glad I get this front row seat where I get this this solo seat to get to hear a person's story, man. I get to sit here and listen, and a whole lot of recovery is connection, right? There's a whole lot of it. There's that one dude that what was his name? His last name is Harry, Hari. Damn, I can't remember. But he says he's pinned this thing that said connection is the opposite of addiction. And when I sit here with people, whether if I've known them in the past or I don't know them, because there's been a lot of people that sit on that side of the table that I had no clue who they were when they showed up at my door.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody sent them and connected them, so-and-so would be good for your podcast. But always my point here is that there's a deeper connection that happens as a result of doing this, and that's like a side benefit, icing on the cake from doing this thing and working these steps together. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better through that too. So
awesome, me too.
Future looks bright.
Hell yeah. All right.
I say two things every time.
Okay.
If you're not having a blast in your recovery, you're not doing it right.
100%.
And thank you all for allowing John, Michael, and I to participate in our recoveries in this manner today.
Amen.
Peace out.
Out.
Always tried to be just who they wanted.